Hey everyone, I'm Trent Kusters, co-founder and studio director of League of Geeks, and this is the Game Maker's Notebook. Today I've been talking with Niklas Åkerblad. He is also known as El Huervo, a multidisciplinary artist based out of Gothenburg in Sweden. Him and his pals have just released Ultros. They've been working on it for a number of years and they released it to rave reviews. So that's why we're here chatting today. But of course, we start talking about what got him first into video games or his earliest memory. But quickly, we just tumble into philosophical chats. And that's kind of the theme of this entire episode. I think it's probably the most philosophical one I've done yet on the Game Maker's Notebook. We talk about the early escapism of his youth, painting, music, his band Popcorn Boy, running around in the woods as a youngster, and how that helped him cope with his anxieties as, well, a youngster. We spoke about him going to college in Sweden, to one of the first video game colleges in the world, and how revolutionary that was at the time and the opportunities it afforded him. And of course, how punk the indie scene was in the early to mid 2000s and the late 2000s that we're talking about. We speak about him getting his indie studio off the ground, the differences and the friction back then of making that happen as opposed to now. We speak about some of his early games, and then we get onto Al's Heartbreak, which was the game that burst them onto the scene with the IGF nomination in 2015, and how he ultimately burnt out on that project. It was too long, it was too hard, and returned to Sweden and focused on his other elements of his artistic career, painting, other outlets, eventually finding his way back to video games, healing through a sort of collaboration with close friends, Jonathan and Dennis, on Hotline Miami, a game you all may well know. He did the cover art on Hotline, a couple of tracks, and this catapulted his artistic career across a number of fields. We speak about the different opportunities and what he was doing after that, before he then again collaborated with more longtime friends, which is a theme you'll hear through this, on what would become Ultros, the psychedelic Metroidvania sci-fi success that they've just had. It's a really special game. I've been playing it obviously in the lead up to this, but there's something very clear about Ultros, is that it's a game with a lot of ideas, not about the game, but like about the world and about life and about you. And it really wants you to think deeply. And it's a very moving experience packaged up in this Metroidvania, right? So we talk a lot about that. We talk about Niklas's goals there, like how video games can allow players to deal with real world problems, to be introspective during a state of play. How him and his team were aiming to be poetic over literal wherever they could, to use symbolism and atmosphere, but the friction, not just in the game, but even on the team, of balancing that with the directness required to have effective gameplay. There's a lot in here, folks, and whether it's about meditating on skateboarding to achieve flow state when you're doing your art, or creative clashes with our partners and the opportunities for introspection that they provide. And there is a whole lot of chatter in here as well about the philosophy of where play and escapism intersect with art and our medium and its ability to change us. Are we there yet? How do we get there? Some really good stuff in here. So without further ado, here's Niklas Åkerblad. Niklas, thanks for joining me today, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's really rad to have you on the podcast. I've been playing Ultros, going through the loop time and time again, so I'm keen to get back into chatting about that. But where we always kick off the podcast, as you may know, is we ask what your first memory of a video game is, or the interaction with a video game that like changed your brain and set you on this course?
Yeah. This is a hard pick, actually, because I think my first memory is some weird homemade computer game on my dad's computer called Comics.
That's awesome.
Back in like 80, must have been 80. When am I born? 83. So 4 years. I was 4 or 5, 88,
Wow.
whatever. Yeah, and it was like DOS and everything. And my dad taught me how to like actually enter the commands in DOS to play the game when he wasn't around.
Yeah.
But the game kind of sucked. And
did your dad make it, or was it a homemade shareware one he got from a friend or at a fair or something?
I think he got it from my mom's brother Pat, because he's always been like a computer guy, and he wrote his own like hotel booking framework.
Oh wow, okay, making games on the side.
Yeah, but he didn't make this game. But it was something he got in touch with, and he sent it to us, I think, for like my enjoyment or something. But then we also got Prince of Persia, the first one, which was I didn't understand shit. It was like too hard for me, and I didn't understand anything. And I think the first guy with the sword always killed me.
Yeah, I think I was the same, Niklas. I was born in 86, we're very similar ages. And like, I remember Prince of Persia, that first one being like ridiculously hard, like just dying continuously over and over to that first dude with the sword.
Yeah, and realizing it was timed and everything, and you had to like get to the end in 90 minutes or something stupid. Like how, to this day, I'm still wondering how does anyone actually do that?
I know. I went back and played some Ninja Gaiden a while ago because they like came out on the, they've released all the classics on the Nintendo Switch on that platform. Yeah. And I was just like, this is way fucking harder than I remember. Though some of those retro games are insanely hard.
Yeah, I mean, especially Ninja Gaiden. I remember that too, like with the dogs and everything, and you're like throwing that shuriken around, and it's like super hard.
But like, there's something interesting there, like you playing, one of your first games being Prince of Persia, and you're stuck on the first guy just restarting over and over again. There's some parallels to Ultros there with the, the Metroidvania difficulty and the looping, almost a very loose connection.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, yeah, for sure. But I think actually, coming to that, Prince of Persia inspired Ultros a lot, especially in the beginning, I think, like with the whole deliberate movement, like you couldn't cancel your attacks, and the whole fighting system was a bit slower and more like deliberate. And it was a lot about like that initial inspiration from Prince of Persia and Flashback.
Interesting.
To be honest.
How old were you with Prince of Persia? Would you have been like 6 or 7 at that point in time or something, a couple of years later?
Yeah, 6, I think, actually. But that wasn't like the biggest impact because games were still like something you did on the computer. But then we bought King's Quest 6 Here Today, Gone Tomorrow, I think it was called. And that was my like first point and click adventure. Yeah. And it was like awesome for me. I didn't understand anything, so my dad had to like translate all the text boxes and everything. But I could solve some of the problems anyway. But just the music and the vibe and everything. And this was still like on a 486 PC without a sound card. So all the music and all the sounds were like insane.
Yeah. Fuck yeah. And so so you played some point and click adventures and everything. And like, what were you doing? Like, what were your interests as a kid at this point in time? Like when you're in primary school and knocking about, obviously, your talents are on display as an artist, Niklas, massively, right? Like that's especially in the indie scene. Like it's where, a lot of folks really came to know your name, like Anel Huervo. Were you drawing all the time as a kid, or was like video games something that you were doing, or were you like running around in the woods?
I was running around in the woods a lot, as well, for sure. Yeah, but like Gothenburg is like close to the woods. We have a primeval forest pretty close by, so like big trees and everything. Yeah, it was proper for sure. But I was into escapism pretty early on, like a huge imagination, and I think I realized pretty early on that I sort of dealt with my emotions by drawing. So my parents are architects, right?
Yep.
And so they have a lot of like easy access to proper pens and like paper, like pretty expensive stuff.
So good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So my mom always made sure that I had pen and paper of various sorts at home. And whenever I went to like a friend's house, this was pretty snobbish of me, and they didn't have the same pens that I did. I was like,
"You're like crayons? What the fuck?
Yeah, come on. Where
are my Copic markers? Thank you.
Yeah, my Pittsburgh pen. Come on."
Totally, I can imagine the son of architects for sure.
Yeah, a little bit snobbish there. So I used to draw a lot and everything from early on, and I used to draw a lot of monsters. So one of the earliest memories I have is from kindergarten, where I was like drawing monster books for the other kids.
Would you just draw monsters in their books? You know, when you're in school and you got to like write a story and draw it. Would you just be the illustrator? Because I had a little racket at school doing headings, like the typography of people's books. Basically, that was my my little racket. Or would you make books for them, like specific books that you would hand out or something?
I think our like kindergarten teachers just stapled together paper for us.
Nice, cool. So zines, really.
Yeah,
and little zine stuff.
Yeah, and then you just draw these monsters in them, and I think we named them, and then we went on like Ghostbuster hunting and stuff like that. Yeah, it was great. But my kindergarten teachers, got a little bit concerned because I was only drawing monsters, so they asked my mom if we had like problems at home.
That's so good. And your mom is like, "No, he's drawing monsters because there are no problems at home." That's got it all wrong.
Exactly. But she actually asked me, and apparently, according to the story, I don't remember this. I said I draw them because it makes the pain in my stomach go away.
God, that's so intense, Nicholas. So now let's shoot forward a little bit to you now. You know, you're 41 years old. Do you still draw to make the pain in your stomach go away?
For sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
in some sort of cosmic way, and probably literal as well.
I think just being alive is an intense experience, and for like existential dread, and like, I mean, as you get older, of course, you get better at maybe not better. Yeah, it becomes different, and I think you find better ways of dealing with it. But escapism and drawing, like, for sure, that's just a way of. I think it's a form of expression. Like, it gets very lonely at the center of the earth, as Zoe Thorogood, the famous comic. She's very awesome. Comic book artist. She made a autobiographical, or whatever it's called in English. Autobiography, comic book about her, like, depression.
Yeah.
And like how you're so sort of, you become really like stuck in your own little bubble.
Yeah.
And expressing yourself, I feel, is very important for like spiritual growth and like existential growth. So I think drawing for me, like, is a way to do that. Or painting, or like just creativity in general is a way to express yourself. So you, like, whatever you have on the inside, you can share with other people, and then you can view yourself through their interactions with it, or whatever. Like, everyone is a mirror. So it's kind of like that.
Do you feel like when you were a kid, like, you know, you said this thing to your mom about, you know, drawing to make the pain in your stomach go away. But do you remember having some sort of feelings of like, you know, it was a cathartic escape even back then, that there wasn't just like some fun pastime, but it was some sort of like coping mechanism, even if it was for just being a kid dealing with the world?
I think, honestly, I didn't understand the mechanisms like deeply on a Jungian state like that. But I did feel the thing of, because it sort of like went deep and I couldn't understand what that was, but I could feel like it made it more real somehow. Yeah. So for me, it was like, if I draw these monsters, they're like somehow more real. It's hard to explain, but it's this kind of immersion in it. If I was only like drawing shallow things, I think I would probably get bored. But this, like, it was magical. It made it more magical somehow.
Yeah,
because it had a
life
spiritual
into these creatures, right? They weren't just figments of your imagination. They had a kind of tactility on the page afterwards.
Exactly, they were alive to me for sure. For sure. Yeah.
So so you're playing a little bit of video games, you're drawing and, you know, like sort of interacting with these monsters in a sense. And that continued through your teen years. Did drawing seem to have like quite a strong presence through your life continuously? And in your teen years, tell us about that. Like, were you just drawing all the time, or were you skateboarding, or like still in the woods, or what's the vibe?
Yeah, I was skateboarding for sure. I was. Still am, actually.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love skateboarding. It's one of the best things that ever happened to me, for sure.
That's so right, same.
Are you skateboard too?
Oh, well, not anymore. I went into work once. I thought, I'm going to skate into work. This is about 4 years ago. And I got into the studio and my producer looked at me and goes, you carry that here? I was like, no, I skateboarded in.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think that was like the final hit to my ego about skateboarding.
What? Are you a fucking poser, man?
Yeah, exactly. Poser. So I love the culture. But, you know, I was going to say you're a braver man than me, because I noticed after 30, when I got on the board, whenever I would do a trick, I would just involuntarily jump a meter away from the board. There was some kind of self-preservation that kicked in now that I didn't have when I was like 16, like jumping down some set, you know, at the local mall.
It's funny that you say that, because I hurt myself badly picking the skateboard up again and doing that a couple of times. So I was like, I want to fucking skateboard, and I don't want to hurt myself like this. So I need to commit. I need to like teach myself to commit. And actually, I took my experience from art with that as well, because if you want to have like flow, if you want to channel flow and not just be susceptible to it on a whim, you have to sort of find that fine frequency where you are challenging, you are comfortable, but you're also challenging yourself. So you have to be on a little bit like deep water all the time. And if you've been working on a painting for a week and you fuck it up, I mean, that's dreadful. But you can't. Fear is the mind, you know. But fear is the mind killer.
Fear is the mind killer, man. Yeah.
So you got to get over that, and I did in my art. I feel so. I just took that into skateboarding, and like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I'm skateboarding because I want to like land these tricks. So then I have to like, you know, put myself out there and actually do it. So I tried to train myself to get rid of that. So I could like do shit and realize jumping downstairs when you're 30 plus.
Like, yeah, there are other elements of skateboarding. We'll let the kids take that. We'll hang over here in the Flatland Park.
Yeah, for sure. And I still actually do the thing with like flip tricks. So I stopped doing flip tricks because I land weirdly and I land too much primo. So fuck that shit.
Yeah, I get like kind of when I'm midair and I'm doing a flip trick at this age, I get, you know, like in Romeo Must Die, that like very funny Jet Li and Alia film. I get like the flashes of like X-ray of my ankle snapping while I'm like midair.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So it's just too visceral. The flipping is too much. So when I'm on there, I'm always just doing like pop shovets and random shit like that.
Same here, definitely. Yeah. Like in doing a lot of curb tricks, like on small curves and being technical like that. Works fine.
The box or the ledge is your friend when you hit 35 plus.
For sure. You don't get the X-ray like...
Yeah, the warning sign, the self-preservation warning sign, for sure.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens if I'm rolling up to a big curb. I can still get that inertia of that X-ray thing, whatever you want to call it. Like it
get the heebie-jeebies.
And just like, and then hurt myself. And it's like, what the fuck? Take it easy.
Take it easy, relax, man. We're not out here to kill ourselves. We're just out here to vibe and get a bit of exercise in.
Exactly.
So this, I'm really keen on more of this, like this flow state thing, because as you've like, that's kind of the theory, right? Is like in between, challenge and fun, right? Like you find that flow state. But you're saying that you very specifically just like committing to these tricks, not leaping a meter away from the board involuntarily, but like putting yourself on the line, that as an artist over the years that you found that like manually dialing into that state is something that helps you push through those longer phases of flow state. Like it'll get you there, as opposed to just, a lot of people sit down at their desk and they talk about it coming to them or whatever. But have you found over the years that you kind of have been able to just commit into the process and make it happen?
Yeah, for sure. It's taken some study, meditation, skateboarding. I mean, I don't know how X-rated this podcast is, but I was smoking weed as well.
Yeah.
Because
that
that's
helps.
sort of like, it kickstarts whatever that process does for you. But it's like you can't sustain that over a long period of time because it has other implications in your life.
Yeah, of course.
But
also
it can help you.
expensive too.
Yeah, I mean, alcohol is worse when it comes to money. But it can sort of like create that state, like you can it can put you in that state, and you can sort of like remember that. So if you meditate upon it, you can like sort of remember what that feels like.
Yeah.
And you can help use that as a beacon and then get there manually without like...
It's one of actually meditation, that state, like setting up this, remembering states or using states as a beacon. That's actually a really great way to put it. And then actually placing yourself back into that state, almost like a checkpoint save is like a weird way to put it,
No, it is proper, for sure.
Definitely one of the best meditation, like little techniques or hacks that I've found. And one that, you often hear meditation teachers talk about, like you don't need to be sitting down with the lights off and your eyes closed to meditate, right? Like you can like actually pause for a moment. You can be meditating while you're talking to someone to regain your, sort of composure or whatever. And I find that like if I'm like I used to find it when I would have like a leadership sort of situation on the team where like, one of my big things is that, like, if people don't trust me, I can feel like, I can feel myself start to get defensive, and I would just remember like this, like the state of, no, what's it like to actually feel, comfortable and like solid with this person, and like being able to trust my team and non-defensive. And literally just like I did like a little hand exercise to like, basically it was almost like a checkpoint save to get myself back into that state. And it's, and just meditating on it and thinking about that state and then using it in your everyday life was super, super great hack. But I've never heard of it used for something like entering a flow state, like, like sitting down and switching that on to like get some work done. That's fucking awesome.
But I mean, seriously, it's the same thing. So, and I was actually inspired by these religions where these older guys are sitting with like a radband.
Yeah.
A bead.
Like a rosary bead. Yeah.
Yeah, rosary beads, and like doing the...
You're moving through them.
Yeah, as they're reciting whatever. As a ritual to like get rid of anxiety and worry. I was like, okay, if they've been doing that for thousands of years or whatever, you could have like a similar, like a totem or, as you said, like a hand coordination, like rituals, like, or an object that you use to help you do that. But nowadays, I dialed it down to when I'm painting, for example, or doing creative, music is different. I'm like, if I feel my thoughts wandering, I'm like, trying to be like, you're here now, this is what you're doing. And that's nowadays basically all the reminder I need to get back into that.
Yeah.
But it's a process. I mean, it's taken maybe 6 years since I started doing that to actually get there and have that sort of like reflex more than this conscious act you have to like do with meditation and have these like rituals going on for you.
But that's been like, I think what you just stated, that like, no, you're here now. This is what we're focusing on. Like that sort of really forgiving, non-judgmental, just recentering and refocusing is, I think, like that was one of the biggest breakthroughs for me when I started meditating too. Is like just even like when you're talking about just basic meditation, like the noises in the room or getting yourself distracted, you're carrying off in thoughts, thinking about your project that you're going to do later in the day or something. And you're like, no, okay, recenter my thoughts, not focus on my breathing or whatever, non-judgmental. But you're talking about doing it with like, no, I'm here, I'm painting today, this is what I'm doing, back in that first step. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it varies for everyone. Everyone has different like ways, as you mentioned, with like you're talking to someone and you don't feel trusted enough and not safe, and then that might trigger like an emotional effect in you, and you like become present in that, and you can say to yourself, I don't need to do that. Like I can just recenter myself. I feel like it's the same thing because your body, maybe this is biology. Feels like it does the emotional reactions all the time, and you have to like have this organ in your brain that can like, oh, wait a minute, let's filter what's happening, so you don't enter these like fight or flight situations. Like
pull yourself out of that lizard brain, right, back into that frontal cortex.
Exactly, back into Siri brain or whatever.
I'm going to use that from now on. That's so good. Yeah, back into my Siri brain. Let's go. Yeah. Out of lizard brain into Siri brain.
Yeah.
So you mentioned music, but this is another one, of your multidisciplinary artist, I'm sure is something that you've been referred to before as, but like, tell me about music and your like childhood. Was music something that came to you early in your childhood? Are you from a musical family, or was it something you picked up later?
I think my parents, and actually both sides in general, are kind of like artistically inclined. Or my granddad used to paint, and sort of like it's been around, like, I guess. So and my dad used to like have a synth and like guitar at home and stuff like that. It's not like they were like, it wasn't like this super creative environment where there's music everywhere, but we enjoyed culture.
Yeah.
So, and the synth was always available to me. So I used to like just play and listen to.
Fuck yeah.
and we had the test screen when I was a kid, like, on TV, when there's no program, there's like this test screen. And in Sweden, they used to play classical music.
Right.
And during these tests, and I used to sit there and stare at it and listen to it. And I remember being like emotionally stirred by that. So I remember trying to play the same things on the synth.
Hell yeah.
But sort of ending up just like and doing that for, I don't know, to me it seemed like hours, but when you're a kid, time is different, so it might have been just 15 minutes.
Hell yeah. And so you started on the synth. Did you ever play in bands or anything like that, or
we had a super weird band called Popcorn Boy.
That is fucking awesome. What a great name. Popcorn Boy.
Yeah, I was so happy with that name, and every time we had a show, everyone mistook it for Popcorn Boys.
Oh, right. Like, you're like, no, singular. Yeah.
Yes, because otherwise we sound like a boy band, which is
exactly. No, that's not the vibe.
Like, our main inspiration was Rage Against the Machine.
Okay, I can see it. Rage Against the Machine, Popcorn Boy. Okay.
Yeah, but I think it was. Oh, yeah. We tried to be random because we were also inspired by a Swedish rock band or punk band called Bob Hund. Which is Bob Dog, it means.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So I think that nonsensical name.
Another great band name.
Yeah, exactly. Bob Dog. And their music was like punky, but it had these like weird lyrics. almost like quaint, naive rhymes. And we took that sort of playfulness and mixed it up with the rage of Rage Against the Machine, and had this weird thing called Popcorn Boy.
Hell yeah! What did you play in Popcorn Boy? What was your
drums?
Position in the band? Drums. Hell yeah!
Yeah. So I play drums. I like rhythm a lot. I like beats. So yeah, that's where that started, I guess. And also, it was just fucking cathartic to like.
Yeah, right. Just let it out.
Like that movie. No, yeah, that's good too. But I was thinking about the Wall Street movie with Christian Bale, where he's like autistic.
Oh, American Psycho?
No. No, it's about the crash in 2008. The Big Short.
Yeah. The Big Short, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like that movie a lot. So and he does that. He goes down into his basement and like drums when he's like frustrated. And I could really connect with that, because that was the same for me. Like whenever we were playing a show or playing in the studio, like rehearsing, I used to hit the drum so hard that the whole set moved.
They're like playing, they're like, Nicholas, chill the fuck out, man.
Yeah.
That's so like, good.
So maybe I should have dialed it back a little bit.
No, never. Lean in. Hell yeah. How old were you when, and how long did Popcorn Boy reign for? Are you still together?
No, maybe we were playing 3 years maybe. And
okay. What years were this? Were these in your wild teen years or?
12 to 15, I would say.
12 to 15. That's so awesome. That's so much earlier than I thought as well.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah, we were on it. So that was, I still remember it. I still have the songs in my head. So
yeah. How'd you go in school? Were you like, was it just all escape? Because for me, for example, I was just like not dialed in at school. Every now and then I would have a teacher that would like figure out that I was a clever kid. I just didn't fit with kind of like the structure of school, and they would change it up, and then I would get straight A's in that class. But like most of the time I wasn't dialed in. Did you find you had a bit of a monkey mind, like your mind was elsewhere, or were you able to like dial in at school as well?
No.
I wanted to just at least give you the opportunity, but yeah.
Yeah, thanks. No, it's terrible. But I mean, drawing classes, obviously I did good. And all the creative classes, that's where I dialed in my A's.
Whenever you had that opportunity to express yourself through all these outlets.
Yeah, it was fun, but maths and stuff. Yeah. I remember, and to this day, I'm still like, what the fuck, man? Like,
that can be someone else's problem.
Yeah. So and why do I, yeah, sorry.
No, you go.
Why do I have to know the names of all these kings and whatever? I have to say though that getting older, I don't know if this is like an old guy thing. Why do always old guys like to watch these black and white documentaries about Hitler and his fucking generals or in the World War II?
Just the whole History Channel back catalog, right? Yeah.
Yeah, why? And now I think I've started to realize that, oh, okay, so that king, he did that. Okay, and that queen, she was like, interesting.
Yeah, you're catching that like mid-30s, like that middle-age history bug. Yeah.
Yeah, and finally I'm becoming the thing I was dreading. So
we all do. We all become the monster, right? Yeah. You become the monsters you drew.
Yeah.
Do you remember like when you were sort of in your adolescence, in your teen years and stuff, when all this is going on, you're drawing monsters and you're playing music and, you're fucking around at school. Do you remember having any sort of aspirations for what you wanted to do or what you wanted to be? Like, did you have a vision of what like grown up Niklas was going to do, or were you just kind of like riding the vibe at the time?
I don't think I was concerned at all with that, to be honest. I think I was pretty good at being present when I was a kid. But maybe this is an after construction, actually, because I did have a lot of anxiety as a kid too, and like worry for sure. And also my parents divorced and stuff like that, and that fucks you up when you're a kid.
Yeah, that's
but I think generally I was pretty good at like being in the now. Maybe I think that's a coping mechanism. Like escapism allowed me to like flee, but in the escapism, I could be present to do that. Which I'm really grateful for, but also it allowed me not to deal with trauma until I got old.
Move away from that friction, some of the harder elements of life, to be able to then just be present in the areas that came a lot easier to you.
Exactly. Not just invite the things you like, but also invite like the bad vibes, not just paint the pain away. Because it's still going to stay there. But I had no idea. It wasn't until maybe I spent 6 months in Cork on Ireland with my girlfriend when I was 20. Wow. Cork was awesome. Learned a lot during that experience, that's for sure. But then I came back.
Did you go for the girl, or did you go because you had a job there, or there was or you just went for fun, or?
No, she was there, and I stayed back at home, and I was working at IKEA.
Like a proper Swede, yeah.
Yeah.
Doing your national duty.
Yeah, exactly, for IKEA. One nation in name, but then she went to Cork, and I was like, "Fuck this! I'm joining you."
Yeah, I'm coming.
So I went over there, and it was rough the first months because I didn't get a proper job, and this guy called Ian Murphy, I think his name was.
Very common Irish name, I hear.
Yeah. And he tricked me like into losing money, and it was like,
oh no,
yeah, it was horrible. But then I got a job at Game, the old like video game outlet called Game. Yeah. So I worked there for like 3 months. And my boss hated me, Eugene. He used to come into work and shout, like, he was Scottish, and he used to go like, "Niklas, where are you, little cunt, you little loser?"
Just yell at just like full straight up workplace harassment.
Yes, for sure. I didn't know that at the time. But
is this why it was was Eugene the reason why it was a 3-month stint? Did you quit? Did you do a classic like throw your game apron on the ground and say I quit?
A little bit, but actually he got fired because he had been stealing money from the safe. I know.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and one of the managers, she came up to me afterwards and like, "Are you like I know he was being an asshole towards you, and like it must feel nice for you with him gone." And I was like, "Where were you when?"
Yeah, thanks, lady. Yeah. Would have felt a whole lot nicer if I heard from you a month ago.
Yeah, exactly. But, she was nice anyway. Like, we had, like, after work, so it was like, the vibe was good anyway. Like, no grudges, whatever. It was a learning experience. You're young, whatever. You're supposed to be in that situation.
Exactly. You followed a girlfriend to Ireland. You've been ripped off. Eugene's calling you the C-bomb every day at work. Like, stealing money from the safe. Like, this sounds to me like the adventure that a 20-year-old should have. Like, if my son leaves at 20 and goes to Ireland, this is actually exactly what I want to happen to him. I don't want him to just get a job and everything be okay. This is what, shapes a man into a man, right?
It is, for sure. Definitely. You need these experiences. And you're actually like young and more resilient towards it, I feel like. There's this
naivety. Bounce back like rubber, right?
Yeah, ignorance is bliss. It's like skateboarding when you're young. You bounce like rubber as well on the ground. Now it's just like
stairs. Yeah, totally. So when did you tell me about when you started to actually make you're 20 in Ireland. What you say you were there for a couple of years?
No, 6 months only.
Oh, 6 months only, right. Yeah. Tell me, when did you first start? When were you able to make a kind of some cash, not even a living, but like when were you first making cash off your art? There's
this Swedish clothing brand called Kappahl.
Right. Okay.
And in I think it's called Gymnasium in Sweden. I don't know what it's called.
Gymnasium.
Yeah. So you're like between 16 and 18. Yeah. And my old art teacher, Hasse Basse, or Seabass, his sister was
the
working
names, dude. What are these names? Who are these people that you're meeting? I love it.
Yeah, I don't think he knew about his nickname, but he was
right,
Seabass.
okay. Well, secret Seabass then, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he was, a true artist. Like, he was smelly. Like, everyone was talking about his smell.
Yeah. Alcohol. Yeah. That's like my best. All my best writing teachers were like tortured alcoholics in school.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. Except this guy wasn't an alcoholic. He was just like armpits.
He was just stinky. Yeah. Right. Okay. Just yeah.
Love him though. So all good.
Hell yes, Seabass.
Yeah, hell yeah, Seabass. But his sister worked at Kappahl, and she was like some kind of manager, and she got in touch with me through him, and I got to draw like illustrations for like the children clothes. So that's how I made money, my first money from art.
That's awesome. And how old were you at this point? Like you were like 16 to 18?
Yeah, exactly.
Shit, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was great because during the summer breaks, I didn't have to have a summer job like the other idiots.
Oh, right. You could just run around in the woods again.
Yeah. So I did that.
Write some popcorn boy bangers when everyone else is working their job.
For sure. There's no need to fear. Santa is here. Our Savior, our King. Kapling, kapling, kapling.
Yes. I'm into it. So like, and how long did you do that for?
The Kappahl thing.
Yeah.
It was 2-3 years, I think.
Cool.
I don't remember. Yeah, something like that.
And did that like, because I love, this is how these things start, right? It's like you get one thing and it kind of leads to another thing, or if someone introduces you. Was that kind of like the thing that sort of kickstarted you down a chain of events to be doing more work, or did it kind of just end and then you found yourself a game at 20?
Yeah, it kind of just ended because the manager, Susanne Stålrud, she got another job, and the other person who took her position didn't like my stuff, and just trickled down. But I did some cover illustrations for like bands.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, actually.
Which is funnily like you would end up doing the Bandcamp. Like, this is one of the things that I was aware of that you did, right? You did like Bandcamp Weekly?
Yeah, for sure. I did Bandcamp Weekly for a long time, like 6 years or something. That was great, actually.
Yeah, what a
shout out to Moni Orif for like putting me on there. That was like
hell yeah. Thank you, Moni.
Yes, thank you.
Right, so you got your start doing some, and were these just mates at the start, or was it through like a local label or something, or?
No labels. It was like just maybe the reputation or something. I don't know.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, just folks seeing your stuff.
Yeah. So, and I also sold some paintings at my gymnasium because I went to like a semi-art school. Like, it's gymnasium, so you don't have that many art classes, but it was like focused on creativity. So we would have like shows every now and then, and I sold some paintings there and stuff like that. Yeah. So it was pretty chill like that. And then I wasn't concerned with earthly things like careers and stuff like that.
So did you because I remember, we're sort of jumping forward a bit now, but like, I mean, would have been the first time that I was familiar with your work or came across your work, Niklas, was like, I'm sure so many people on this podcast, listening to this podcast right now, would, without even maybe realizing it, was the Hotline Miami cover art, right? Like collabing with Cactus on that stuff. Like, when was that? Like, what, you would have been 30 or something at that point in time?
Earlier, I think, to be honest. Yeah, because I remember telling Dennis, the other half of Denaton, at my 30th birthday party that, like, you must be happy now because you don't have to worry about money anymore. So it must have been after the success there.
So it was like in your mid to late 20s.
Yeah, I think I saw the first version of Hotline Miami at Cactus's place, Jonathan. When I was 28 or something. I'd just been back from Paris because I was in Paris also for 6 months.
Hell yeah. What were you doing in Paris? Just hanging out? Was it another girl?
Yeah.
Busted, of course. It's makes sense.
Yeah.
And we all travel for love, right? It'll send us to the far reaches of the earth.
Yeah, and I'm happy about that because otherwise I wouldn't have went to these places myself. So
Hell
I'm really
yeah.
grateful. I'm really
Yeah, that's
grateful for
awesome,
that.
man. Follow your
Yeah,
heart, you know.
yeah,
That's so
for
so
sure.
rad. So
And
okay,
Paris was awesome. So
yeah. And were you working there while you were there, or like were you involved in the art scene in any way, or?
I was doing some stuff with Shelby Shinka, my label present label guy,
Yeah, cool.
and helping him out with his board game Zoneplex, and also working with Erik Sveding on a game called Elle's Heartbreak.
Yes.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
did almost all of the graphics for that stuff
It's
together with
incredible.
Tobias Sjögren. Yeah,
So why don't
thanks.
we, like we're there, so why don't we dive into Elle's Heartbreak? Let's take us back to the start. How did Elle's Heartbreak kick off? And maybe beforehand, before we get into that, why don't you tell folks just like the sort of elevator pitch for what Elle's Heartbreak is,
Ooh,
for those who aren't familiar with it listening?
Erik Sveding wanted to make a game about where you teach people programming through the ability to reprogram the game itself. And he wanted it to be very like I don't know the proper words for this really, but like he wanted, you know, if you were hacking something and you broke the code, it was supposed to like come, you know, black smoke out of it to show that it's broken.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Very cute,
Yep.
like not just prompt errors and stuff like that.
Yeah, very visual, like very kinesthetic.
Yeah, so he just asked me if I wanted to be on board on that because we had done an iPhone game called Cometen prior to that, which went very well. It was a successful project for us, like both artistically and sort of monetarily. It
So
paid my
you've been
bills.
collabing for a bit already.
Yeah, we actually talked about making something big back in college because we went to college together, and
Yeah, cool.
but he was like, we should make something small first to see if it's a fit.
Clever man.
Yeah, Eric is like super smart. So,
And what did you
obviously,
study in college, Nicholas?
video game creation.
Amazing. Right. So you kind of like, when did you decide that? Was that kind of just like, oh, you know, you look through the book and you're like, oh, that's dope, I guess I'll do that? Or did you have a feeling like as you were, you know, in gymnasium, like that you were heading in that direction?
My mom wanted me out of the house. And,
Yeah, that's fair. So you got to
So
find
she-
some shit to do, Nicholas. You're driving me crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that being a rough period. Like, get a job. Like, I don't want a job. But she found this pamphlet for a video game school college in Skövde. So I went there
Yeah.
and did stuff there.
Hell yeah.
Uh,
And did you enjoy it?
that Yeah. I mean, college was great for me. It was. It really
hell
was.
yeah.
And I met some good people, and we. I mean, it was new. The school, like the program, was really new back then. This is like I started in 2004, folks. Like this is when World of Warcraft first came out.
Yeah, I think it's actually a really good note to make, Nicholas, because like so many of the great video game courses and colleges and everything that we know now, like they weren't even around then. Like when I think about RMIT here in Melbourne is like one of the best games courses in the world now, and like that, I don't even think there was a games course in 2004. You know, like it's and then also like back then too, like independent development wasn't what it is today. Like it was actually like it was right before that sort of indie renaissance, right when the iPhone and everything had just come out, and you know, engines were about to be free. Online collaboration tools like Trello and Slack and everything was still years away. You still had to have a publisher to publish on Xbox, and all, you know, and you couldn't even get onto Steam. Like it was a hand curated thing. Like so that like it was really it was really an impenetrable place even for the tertiary education institutions, because they had to stay on the kind of bleeding edge alongside this studio infrastructure that had all these dev kits and tech and engines and everything that was impenetrable for them as well. Like I don't think a lot of people realize how much the indie renaissance not only cracked open video game independent development for independent developers, but also for tertiary education institutions, you know, made it way more accessible for us to be able to teach it. So that's crazy that there was like a video game specific course at a college over there and you were in it.
I think it's there were some like real eldsjälar, like fire souls. I don't know what it's called in English,
like people like sort of forward thinkers, like people who just like is that
yeah,
what you're
exactly.
saying? Like people who were like just way ahead of their time, kind of thing.
I think a couple of like video nerds in Skövde just like felt like this is the future. We need to make a school. They got in touch with the college in Skövde and then they worked it out. So like exactly as I say, when I got there, we were taught like Maya and Pascal, and we used like this engine called Ogre 3D, which was free and super insane.
I remember Ogre.
Yeah, you remember?
I forgot about Ogre. Wow.
Yeah, it was
because
crazy.
I was just thinking, like, what fucking engine did you use? Like,
yeah,
Ogre 3D.
That was it. It was Ogre, but then like Microsoft with the XNA and also like Unity. Actually, in 2006 or 7 was people were talking about it, but also the game engine that Bethesda was using, Gamebryo.
Oh right, okay, yeah.
Was actually you could buy it for 100,000 Swedish kroner.
Wow, you mean an educational like license or something, or for the school, or just you could just buy the engine like the source?
Yeah, you could buy the engine, and we did that because we started a small video game company when we ended school. Me and a couple of guys called Short Fuse Games, and we made.
What year was this, Niklas? Like, was this around 2004 as well that you started, or 2006 or something that you started the company?
I think we started the company in 2007 after finishing school, because school was like 3 years. And then we did that for 2.5 years up until 2009.
It's crazy, man, to think about. Like, I'm just thinking about the ease of access to development these days. Like, I used to have this big, long email that I would send to folks when they would ask about how to get into video games. And now I just say, make games, like you can literally download Unity or Unreal, go on YouTube and like make a game literally in a night if you want to, like some tiny thing, remake a Load Runner or something, right?
Yeah.
But like also, you guys had to spend $100,000 to buy an engine to start your indie company, right?
Yeah, because you couldn't really build anything in Ogre 3D. It was like insane to just import stuff into that stuff.
Where did you find the cash for that? Like, how do you raise $100,000? Did you get like a little business loan, or was it like through the school or family and friends?
This is the thing. Nowadays, probably know about Valheim. You know about Goat Simulator.
Yeah.
You know about Minecraft.
I do. I'm familiar with all of these games, actually.
Yeah, so all of these things more or less come out of Skövde because of the school. Like one of the designers for Valheim, we actually worked together at Short Fuse.
Amazing. He was at your studio?
Yeah. Henke.
Cool.
And I remember like when I heard about Valheim and saw his face on like an interview, I was like, what, Henke? What the fuck? Cool, man.
Yeah, that's like, dope. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was like this talented, inconspicuous guy. And I remember sleeping at his apartment when we had this game jam called No More Sweden in Skövde. And he was living there with his girlfriend, and they were like, just making, sort of doing this work for hire for other people. And it seemed like this is not a place for his talent,
Yeah.
So seeing that happen for him was like, whoa, okay, shit,
so
dude.
Dope. I love that. It's so great when you see people like, you see the potential in them, and it's not that they're not activating it or whatever, but it's like the world hasn't like pointed the money hose or the success hose of whatever that form may be for you, like at you. And then it's like, no, this person's had their chance now to shine. Like they made fucking Valheim or something. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is. I just hope they use that money well to do more cool shit.
Yeah, right. That's the great test. It always comes after the fact.
Yeah,
so you were saying like about the school, is this you, because I was asking like how you went about raising funds to like start your studio. Did it?
Oh yeah. So that's why I was talking about that. Like Skövde together with like this business incubator.
Cool.
I can't remember the name. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
But Swedish Game Incubator, maybe it was. Anyway, we met a guy there called Parane. who was also a little bit involved with Embracer later on.
Right, yes, you'd say that in hushed tones, right?
But I think he got out before the debacle, so... Yeah. But anyway, so we met him, and we said, like, we're 10 guys who want to make video games and want to start a company. And he was like, sure, we'll help you out. We'll start a company for you. Tell us what you need, blah, blah. And they actually paid for Gamebryo later on. But first we used XNA for our first project called Colosseum. But then we wanted to make another game called Alive and Undead, which was the game we used Gamebryo for later. Because we wanted to do that game for Xbox, XNA, but we got sort of like a little bit of a deal with PlayStation. And XNA...
Classic like swoop in interception,
Yeah. And it was crazy back then. Like nowadays, it's way more chill. Like back then, they were like tight, holding on to their money, and like you send in a submission, and then you get back like rote bullshit. Like the animation feet are sliding a bit. Like, are you kidding me?
Sit down, PlayStation.
Yeah, exactly. Different times for sure.
Yeah, I know. It's so crazy. It's really, you know, the lines have sort of grayed a lot. I mean, like from like between the corporate video game industry and like the indie sphere, right? Like there's a spectrum in between it, like from like full blown, you know, still your trash bag indie game zinester kids, right, all the way through to your super corporate like financial holdings companies, and there's sort of everything in between. But back then, definitely like in the mid to late 2000s, like it's hard to sort of describe like how punk the indie scene was like at that point in time, and how buttoned up as well a lot of like the commercial video game scene was, and like impenetrable because of all of that bureaucracy and the red tape. It wasn't democratized to the point whereas it was accessible as it is now. Even just globally, you know, like it was very centered on like America and particular parts of Europe and Japan. It hadn't really, you know, even opened up into other areas of the world in a big way.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how it was like that. I think it's just like machinations. Like it's not like someone meant it to be like that.
No.
It's just totally. It's like old business style.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, it's kind of, you know, if you think about the one thing, like, you know, you used to have a publisher to be able to, you know, publish on a console, right? You couldn't do it as a developer. Like that in and of itself has like consequences that flow on from that, like culturally and structurally, right? Like, but now the developers can just interface with Xbox directly, and Xbox are fucking awesome interacting with developers as well, right? Like Charlie and his whole team. You know, so it's like it's just interesting how far we've come in that way, shape, or form.
And especially just a tiny bit. I want to talk about Nintendo. Nintendo just a tiny bit. Like everyone was before, like Nintendo, they were also like, you know, keeping it under wraps for a long time. When everyone else was like. So I just want to.
Yeah, it took them ages to come to the party for sure, definitely. Yeah, and there were people in there as well that were like pushing in a big way, right? Like, you know, Dan Edelman over there. Like obviously, you know, made some big moves and stuff. It was really, and Damon as well, Damon Baker too. Yeah, but like they got there in the end. They're, you know, and now it's just amazing, like the difference in the industry, like culturally.
Yeah, I think they had to get there in the end, and like the heritage of Hiroshi Yamauchi was still like a little bit embedded in there, like his iron hand, even after he was gone.
The iron fist.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I do want to get back onto your games because as you mentioned, you had some success. You set up the studio. We're going to fly through a little bit of that. You had some success with this first iPhone game. And then you got on to Al's Heartbreak, which is this game that, you know, like you said, is to teach folks programming, but in a game sort of format. And I remember it was like, and you did all of the art and everything for that. It's a stunning game. So if you haven't checked it out, folks, absolutely go. You guys got an IGF nomination for that as well, didn't you? What was it in like 2015 or something? Yeah,
2015 for sure. And we also got a best as best from Rock Paper Shotgun, which
we love that. Of. Hell yeah. That's awesome.
Thanks. We went there, and that was like a crazy experience, and we didn't win, and I was so sad.
It hits harder than any of us would like to admit, that's for sure. Just getting the nom. We've been there. We got the IGF nom for our Mellow in like, I think it was God, it might have been the same year, dude. It might have been
What?
2015 or 2016, maybe 2016,
It
maybe.
it must have been the year after, because I probably would have known you, because I remember like really zoning in on the other
Okay.
people.
It would have, I think the year that we won, Oxenfree pipped us at the post because we're up for visual art.
Oh yeah. Good on that, bro.
Yeah, right. My business partner turned to my other business partner when the winner was announced and just said, "Try harder." Next time, it's like a classic League of Geeks gag. Very funny.
That's when you do a pole driver on the guy.
Yeah, very dry Australian humor. Okay, so you've like else Heartbreak. How did that go for you guys? Like with that process, and coming off the back of that, did you have the sort of fire in you?
No.
You're just burnt out.
Yeah, like has happened a couple of times actually. But after Skövde, I was like, I'm out. I want to be an artist. I moved back to Gothenburg and like started painting. And Eric said, "Let's make games." And I'm like, "No, I'm done." And he's like, "Yes, come on." And then I was like, only if I can like draw the art by hand, and that was Kometen. And then Else Heartbreak, and I was inspired by making models in real life, but doing it in 3D, blah, 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 blah. And after Else Heartbreak, it took like 5 years to make. I was like super tired. So I wanted to get back into art. And but then I ended up with Jonathan and Dennis and made like music and art for Hotline Miami, yada, yada.
Yeah, great opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, plus they were my buddies, Jonathan and Dennis. So of course I wanted to make stuff with them. So
yeah, of course. Yeah. And what a way to heal as well. Like, I think, when you're like, sometimes we can we can get a bit burnt out by our passions and the things that we love. And, a lot of the time too, it happens in the pursuit of commercializing those things. And it's a perfect way to heal.
Yeah, and especially like what you mentioned with the commercializing aspect of it. Like I'm an artist, like true and true, and like for me, the expression is the most important part. And like I don't really care about money and all that jazz. Like it doesn't matter, because it just doesn't. To me, it doesn't. And it just feels like video games are like a hard place if you're a pure artist to work in.
Yeah.
Because we're so focused on like play and engineering.
Yeah.
And I feel like how we've evolved as a culture is like in movies and art, and it's like music has been around for such a long time. So there's like this varied culture of individuals who sort of like consume it. But video games still have this like almost academic ethos in it, where we still discern video games purely from like an analytical point of view, and not so much from an artistic point of view.
Like we have review scores and all these things, right? And remember they used to break them down into like graphics and gameplay and audio.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we had a stint with like Proteos and Braid and stuff like that. Maybe not Braid, but let's say Proteos to make the point, where it's like not so much gameplay, but more like art and atmosphere. And I was like, really,
it's an experience, right?
Yeah, that's what's more important to me. I love Sonic way more than Mario. Mario's a bit of a game, but Sonic has the vibe.
Yeah.
That's what's important to me, and always has been. And I feel like that's sort of like, if you go into making games with like pure idealism around that, it's hard and taxing, because you have to have the engineering and you have to have the like play, and it's like it's a whole different playfield than just expressing yourself artistically. There's so many other components that have to fit in there.
You got to get right. Yeah. And then like taking it to an audience, as soon as you're trying to commercialize something, you're taking it to an audience that has to reach a particular mass to make your money back. So then you're thinking about like, okay, well, in the case of Ultros, for example, we're making a Metroidvania. What are the expectations of the players that are going to come to this type of game? And thinking about catering for that and everything as well. It's funny, you mentioned this, like, developing for the experience and having the confidence, or like the style, the vibe of Sonic having that vibe as opposed to Mario, right? And I remember interviewing or having a chat with Ben Esposito, the developer of Neon White and Donut County and stuff, right? And he spoke about something that I think you'll agree with, which is like this notion of confidence in a video game as a tangible quality that like so many of them don't have these days, that they're almost insecure in the sense of like, no, don't stop playing. Like, like we've got things for you to collect, or like, don't worry, there's New Game Plus, you can keep playing or whatever, as opposed to just, that we were talking about the PS2 era where a game would just be like, this is it, dude. This is the game. Like,
exactly.
take it as it is. Yeah.
Like I was playing Dark Chronicle, like 100. Yeah, 100. Do you remember that?
No. Explain it for our listeners while I Google it.
So the developer is called Level 5, and they also made Ni no Kuni in those games.
Okay. So for our American friends, it's Dark Cloud 2. So Dark Chronicles is the European name. Yeah, Dark Cloud 2. Okay. Yeah.
And like I played that for hundreds of hours. And also like Vagrant Story is a better example. Vagrant Story, like Square Enix, like super obtuse, and so weird. And like all the systems, you can't even like. I still don't understand everything in that game. But you know, Square Enix was like, oh, hey man, this is what we made, and if you don't like it, you can get the fuck out of here. So,
that's it. If you don't like it, you're wrong, essentially. Yeah.
But maybe not that harsh, but it's like you don't have to play it. Like it's fine.
Totally.
Don't do it. Yeah. And I think there's also like internally in those company structures, it was actually, they were like doing that. They understood that quality. Also like the guy who, I can't remember his name, who directed that, he also did like Final Fantasy Tactics and games like that. And I think they understood that we have to cultivate our creators for their creativity to expand. So sometimes we allow them to do these crazy projects where they like just get carte blanche, run around, go crazy.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Yasumi Matsuno. There we go.
Exactly. That's the guy.
Claudio's just piped into chat with the save on that name, Yasumi Matsuno. Yeah, it's I think you see it even in film. Like I mean, Christopher Nolan, right? Like they wanted him to do the Batmans, but they had to let him go off and do his own personal projects to expand and everything before he came back. Yeah,
and maybe nowadays. Oh, sorry, you were.
No, go for it.
It feels like nowadays we're kind of losing that because there's so much money involved, so it's like crazy. And that idea sort of like trickles down because shit always trickles downward, as we know. So that kind of trickles down into the grassroots culture as well of video games. So I actually think big business, you got to listen now. You have a responsibility.
That's it. You heard
don't let late stage capitalism fuck it up, because if you do, the fans will hunt you down.
Yeah, totally. It's funny though as well, like, when things get tough, obviously people can't just like, can't economically like let their creatives go off and make some batshit crazy game for 4 years, right? Like unchecked. But it's so funny how often those projects also turn out to be like the thing that turns the company around or like saves the label or something. And I think as well, there's something really to be said for how much folks are looking for that confidence. And a series, when Ben was talking about confidence, we were talking a lot about indie games and the older era of PlayStation 2 and things like that. But there's a game series that came out that like revolutionized like AAA RPGs, which is like Dark Souls, which is, like a similar thing, right? It just has this confidence to just be like, essentially, fuck you to the player, in so many ways. And everyone wanted it.
Yeah, everyone, when you look at interviews on people like executive producers and like Hidetaka Miyazaki, who's also like the CEO, like interviews with these people, they're like, we find it best to make the games that we want to make and not be concerned about making money. And that seems to be our success. And it's like, why is almost no one talking about that? Make, as you said, I think it's great. Make games with confidence, like as a business model, is actually like a way you can do it. But as I once famously said in a Hotline Miami interview, people trying to analyze what works and it doesn't. You can't analyze it. It's a spiritual thing. But people are like, spiritual, you fucking hippie? Huh? Fuck you, man.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, the Beatles had it all the time, right? It's like everyone wanted to know what the, I'm the lyrics to "I Am the Walrus" like what they mean, and the Beatles are just like, they don't fucking mean anything, dude. Like, they just catch the vibe.
Yeah, exactly. Like, go a new age on that shit, and not just.
All right, so you've after, Heartbreak Else, you've like bounced out, you're back in, or Else Heartbreak, sorry, you've bounced out, you're back in Sweden, you hook up with Dennis and Jonathan, you're doing the cover art, you're doing some music tracks for Hotline Miami. And then you followed up as well with Hotline Miami 2 as well. You're doing some stuff there. And then like, is this around the time you're doing the Bandcamp weekly albums and stuff as well, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. And so like, was that kind of your sort of like your mainstay gig for a while? Were you doing other stuff around the place, or?
Constantly, like I was making my own music and doing my own paintings and like selling paintings to collectors all over the world, to be honest.
That's dope. Congrats, man. That's so rad.
Thanks. I had a good couple of years, like 6-7 years, where it was like happening all the time, which is awesome. Yeah. So I'm really happy about that.
Was there something that you can sort of attribute to like that picking up in a big way, or was it like that you actually just knuckled down and started to do a bunch of art when you went home, or was it a slow burn thing over the years?
I think it's all three, actually. A little bit of a slow burn, just making stuff, put stuff out into the world, and trying to be authentic with it, and then you attract people. But definitely Hotline Miami, like seriously.
I mean, you were the cover art for like, the game, the indie game that like carried the vibe for I don't know how many years.
Yeah, definitely. And also the music for that one is definitely the true catapult for my career.
Yeah, no doubt. It's fucking banger of a soundtrack, dude. It's crazy. Congrats.
It is. And I'm happy to be the only one who has like the lounge track, so to speak.
Hell yeah.
So like I didn't make... Yeah, it does. And I didn't make the most popular music. That sort of like catapulted synthwave, like Moon and the other guys, and like Perturbator. But I feel like I'm very proud of having made music for like key moments, like after the onslaught, when it's like the drone.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of like reflect on what you've done, and the in-betweens when you go to Beard. And
you did the drone stuff as well. Like, cool. Right. I know that. It's awesome.
And like the last boss fight music and all of that crazy stuff. So.
Fuck yeah, dude. That's so rad. And so when did you swing back into video games after Hotline? Was Ultros the next thing, or were there things in between that?
I did some Bandcamp stuff and painted and did a lot of paintings and commissions and stuff like that, and really went into that and like did some DMT and stuff like that.
No wonder why your paintings sold so well.
Tapping into the zeitgeist by way of psychedelic drugs.
Of course.
Yeah, but then Ultros happened. I was approached by another college friend of mine, Morten Bryggeman, who asked if I wanted to make a game, and I had this drawing or painting I had made while also working on the cover for Hotline Miami 2, which was like of this almost like pensive, melancholy character exploring a derelict spaceship. Mm-hmm. And I showed this picture to him, and I was like, this is what I would like to do. I was like, okay, let's do that.
I love it. That's such what a creative meeting. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool.
Hell yeah. What year was that when the first sort of conversation, was it like, are we talking like 2010 or something now? 2000 or later?
No, that must have been 2017. Yeah, 2017, I think it was. And we didn't start work on it like until 2018, I would say. And it was like Morten was still like having a day job, and I was not. So I was like pouring all of my energy into it. And he was like, we were like talking on the phone maybe 2 times a week. Yeah, cool. And to begin with, it was a lot about like me just manically putting ideas and trying to catch him up to speed, sort of.
Yeah. And so it started with the two of you, or were there people already on the project at that point as well?
Well, yeah, Oscar Rudelius as well, like the sound guy who also made the fantastic music. Like we've been collaborating since back in Short Fuse days, 2006. So it's more like a brother to me, actually.
That's awesome. How rich we are to be able to like collaborate with our friends as well. Like it sounds like you've been just constantly like making cool shit with your friends for years.
You know, when you say it like that, I never really thought about it because, but when you say it like that, yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I'm really happy with like, it seems like me and Oscar we've been together on this journey, like in life and art at the same time, that's a true blessing really for sure.
Special. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. On two rides at once. That's crazy. And so how long were you sort of in this phase of like sort of just bashing ideas around and sort of, what did that look like for you? Was the game a Metroidvania at this point, or were you like drawing levels, or was it just visual explorations, or?
At first it was a procedural, I can't say it.
Yeah, man. It's like, we've said it too much. That's why.
Procedurally generated.
We get it. We understand.
Yeah. So it was like that, but roguelike at first. So it was more like creating rooms and putting them together. But then we're like, it's too much work. Like, and I also felt like I want to do something that's more directed and like artistically inferred as an experience.
And less generative, yeah.
Yeah, so started doing levels. Like Morten Gray boxed some stuff, and then I just did. It was pixel art to begin with, so I just did stuff for that and try to like keep the vibe intact from working, doing music with Oscar and doing a lot of drawings of the main character and the game and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And trying to transfer that into whatever we were building. So, and it was more Prince of Persia, as I said from the beginning, or like flashback than actual Metroidvania. The Metroidvania thing didn't really happen until much later, later, and more as an inspiration. I think we all agreed that we didn't really want to make a Metroidvania, but we were like sort of inspired by that genre. But it felt more like we wanted to make an open world 2D game.
Okay.
Basically. Because I feel like Metroidvania has a lot of
baggage that comes with it, like an expectation. Like mechanical expectations, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you call it a Metroidvania now, like where you've ended up, do you think? Do you guys refer to it as that?
It's easier
to matters, right? Like if you're just trying to catch a vibe, but like...
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If you want genres, sure, why not? But as a musician, I don't work with genres.
Hell yeah, dude. Good. All right. And so, like, as a musician and someone who doesn't work with genres, like, what was it for you that, like, that was the thing that from the start, like, caught fire for you, that made it a project? That was it just like actually just collaborating with your mate, or was there something about it that, like, you know, because as you said, you like spent 5 years, was it, like, on your last game, like, and it spun you out of the industry for a bit there, you know, it took Dennis and Jonathan to pull you back into some degree, and now you're about to get back into it again. What for you was that, like, inspiration? Was that, like, you know, that gave you set your fire, or like?
It's just creating worlds. Like that's what I'm about. Like world building. Like that's what my art is about. I'm creating my own world. And the character I came up with, Uji, I sort of fell in love with her.
Yeah.
And wanted to explore the world through her eyes.
Yeah.
And I've been reading the sci-fi Cantos Hyperion by Dan Simmons, which was like an eye-opener for me.
Yeah.
And I was really like enthralled in the whole science fiction, psychedelic, philosophical, existential thing. It was just it was like a strong thread that was pulling me. And I was just going along, I think. And I think Morten kind of like got carried with that as well. Like I was like just, wow.
He's like, hey, dude, I got a game idea.
Yeah, like that for sure. So it was more about world building and obviously being inspired by Bloodborne a lot, like trying to make mechanics and the fighting more deliberate and dangerous and something you had to choose to engage with. So more like exploring a world and learning about the world, and just having enemies as a strong amount of friction in the gameplay. But then having like the planting and the gardening as sort of like a circumventing those fights if you felt like you're not ready or it's just too much for you. And then we had this idea of destructive versus constructive ways of dealing with things, and then it became very existential with like the Hinduistic ideas of himsa and ahimsa, violence and non-violence, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
you can tell when you dive into the game that like the way in which the game talks to you is not direct. It's not holding your hand. It's very, very philosophical in the way that it talks and very esoteric. Even the font is esoteric, right? Like, it takes a while to actually be able to recognize the letters. It's only a few hours in that you're like glance reading, like, what the name of the item you just picked up is or something. But there's, from the very get-go, it's clear that it's a game that has a lot to say, and it has a lot of ideas in it. And from the moment that you dive in, it's a really, and it's not that the game is desperate to share them with you. Like these ideas, it's almost esoteric, but it's very eager and keen in its own time to share them with the player. And you mentioned before, like, these Hindu concepts and stuff. Like, when did that, and also just sort of like off, before the recording here, we were talking about, discovering themes part way through making them. How did you thread that sort of needle of deciding how much to actually like, of what to share with the player and what you want to say, and then sort of how heavy-handed to be about it, right? Because there are like, if you compare an Ultros and it's like philosophical concepts to a braid, for example, like braid, you might say is more, heavy-handed, more of like a hammer over the head kind of with its philosophical concepts, even if it is still a little esoteric, whereas Ultros is like, it's, it's almost poetical in the way that it comes across.
I think, thanks. That was the aim. And I think we actually had some internal friction about these things because
interesting.
I really wanted it to be poetic because I do believe that you don't tell people how to think and feel and how to act in life. You can inspire them and hopefully arrange whatever you make in such a way that comes from within whoever is looking at or interacting with what you are doing. So you kind of have to like a ninja. If you have an idea you want to get out there, like a ninja, you have to go in through the back door and make it seem like they were the ones who came up with it, and you just inspired them. But I believe that. So you have to be humble about it and find, like David Lynch, or Andrei Tarkovsky, find those sort of like symbols and atmospheres that conveys the message that you want to convey without outright saying it. And I think for some of the team members, it was kind of hard to understand what that was. I mean, I was used to that because I've been doing that for most of my career. And this was something new to them. So I think they were a little bit scared to like, how is that going to work? Will anyone understand? They were like used to being more forthright. And so we had there was some friction about that. But then we had this writer, Pelle Kalleby, who sort of worked as an in-between, who sort of like collected these different dogmas and tried to funnel it through his writing. And I think that is why it doesn't necessarily have this we were talking about confidence before, like supreme confidence in how it conveys these ideas, because internally we were kind of like very far apart in how we wanted to do that.
Interesting. There was a bit of division there.
Exactly, which I think happens a lot in video games. Going back to like talking about having artistic brains and having analytical brains, like engineering. There's the engineer and then there's the art, and these two aspects are very different. And you have to
it's
get
funny,
them
like
to
being the son of architects, right? It's a similar thing that architecture runs into, right? Where you want to
yeah,
create this experience and this atmosphere, and you're creating art, but at the same time, the space has to be functional and has to have the ability to either function and operate as an office or a school or a home or something. And a video game is much the same, right? Where players need to be able to interact with it. It needs to perform a function at the end of the day too, if it's going to successfully operate as this vessel for these ideas that you have.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a challenge.
Yeah.
And I think sort of like the music and the graphics and the writing, all of these things sort of like help out doing that. And the gameplay is more is more like the straightforward thing, I feel.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy that we sort of maintained that mystery quality still, like, and still have that poetic substance in there. Because when you're talking about these existential ideas, that's the way you need to talk about it, because otherwise it's just, you can't, like, you have to live your life like this. Okay, who are you?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's interesting. Have you had sort of stories from players who've interacted with it and it seemed to have like a more profound meaning or sort of delivery or impact than you've expected?
Yeah, I read some guys Reddit, like, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 days after the game was released, and I thought we had hidden the meanings like pretty well, and you had to interact with the game for a long time before like really understanding this. But he had like played it all, understood it all, and like wrote this long thesis about everything, and
so awesome.
Sort of nailed most of it. He did miss one key aspect that is kind of like very hidden, but other than that, it seemed like he really understood the implications, and I was really happy to read that and see that, like, okay, this is it landed really well. And I think, as you said, it did have a profound impact on his life, and I hopefully it will have on more people, the same way my art and music has had over the years. Like, I see them almost like as a lament for people who are struggling with life or with existentiality, in that somehow my art can help out and create a cushion for that.
Absolutely.
And I gotten a lot of feedback over the years that apparently that has worked out like that for people. It does that for me, and it seems to be doing that for other people too. And it feels like Ultros actually has the same quality. I'm not sure, though, that video games are ready for that yet, to be honest, because we're still like in this perpetual state of play. And like hardcore escapism. I think. Where like we just don't, we want to flee reality, but we don't want to introspect yet. And Ultros is very much about introspection. And I think for some people that might still be scary to do that. And Ultros is very like, this is what we're doing to you. Like, we want you to do this. So
time to get deep.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're scared of that, it's going to be like, oh shit, okay, too much.
No, I feel you, and it's this beautiful contradiction within video games and our art form. It's funny. I was like, I attracted the capital G gamers on Twitter recently because I was like, I forget the name of. I can't believe Ludwig Göransson, won the Grammy or whatever, right? And he got up and he said that thing about like, thank God my parents gave me a drum kit instead of video games, right? And like the video game, there are a bunch of people on video game Twitter losing it about it. And I was like, it's just so sort of, my take was that it kind of reeked of this insecurity that we have in video games, that like it's an inferior medium. And one of the elements of like what I was saying when I was chatting to people about it afterwards, and I was sort of interviewed, funnily enough, about it, because you can't tweet about something without being interviewed these days, is that like, isn't that fucking great though? Like, isn't that like this contradiction that you're talking about, right? Is I feel, and even the way that you speak about it too, you've spoken about the challenge between you and your collaborators, like some who, if we talk in like a sort of like in a production sort of language, right? Some who might have ownership over more of the gameplay and you have ownership over like the aesthetics, right? And there's that naturally when both of you are sort of, you know, arguing for your sort of stake in the game and like what is important for the player. Like there's that beautiful friction there because of those two things that you also mentioned before, right? Where escapism, it's something that we do in video games. And when you escape, you don't escape to then go and have some heavily introspective, very confrontational experience, right? And then the other one too is this notion of play, is that video games, it's almost like video games, even in their essence of how we talk about them and how they exist in culture, and I don't think this will be forever, but they exist as a form of play, even though they can just be an interactive medium like Proteus, right? Like we were saying. Yeah. And it's not that you can't play in Proteus, right? And so like when you go to play in something, again, it's like, is that the place where you're about to have some deep introspective, like have your thoughts and, you know, beliefs about something and maybe even who you are or how you view the world challenged? Like there is this beautiful innate contradiction there in video games that I think is a wonderful frontier.
But I actually sort of like, I feel like you can have escapism and have these deep questions. They don't have to be scary. That's what I felt like I wanted to try to do.
Tell me more about that.
But the conversation nowadays is so heavy. Like, world is crazy. Like, there's a lot of shit going on. So, like, why do I have to deal with myself too? Like, it's hard, and I understand that. But in order for the world to actually become better, we have to deal with all the colonial trauma, all the like World War trauma, all the like racist trauma, all the bullshit that humans have been dealing with. We have to like sort of take care of that trauma with like great care and love and respect. And that requires introspection, and it has to start somewhere. And I feel like escapism is a very good place because it can be a safe place. For me, it was like that. Video games were a safe place for me to deal with my trauma. But the video games like need to understand that they can deal with heavy subject matters without it being polarized as either like super dark or like just Candy Crush, happy-go-lucky. There's this gradient in between.
Yeah, there's a lot of space that we can occupy, right?
You know, and I feel like Oxenfree and Kentucky Route Zero, just as examples, are games that do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, A Night in the Woods, Hotline Miami, Bloodborne. If maybe that's a little bit on the heavy side, but there are tons of games that like do that, and I feel we can do that more. We can explore that more, and I think we have that responsibility. And as you said, you can't blah 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 on Twitter without games going crazy. Ludwig Göransson, but isn't that like a perfect example? If he had said, "I'm happy my parents bought me video games instead of drum sets and guitars," you know, that would mean that we carry that clout. And we can still do better there. And
I agree.
Right now, we're just into a lot gameplay as instant gratification, and that makes junkies of people. And when they don't get their fix, they act like junkies. I'm saying this lovingly. I mean, I don't mean to bash anyone because I know what it is to be addicted, and it's hard. Yeah. And once someone take that away from you, you're gonna react weirdly, and you're gonna like playing Destiny 2 when they like remove your favorite gun. Of course, you're gonna go crazy because the game is designed in a way to make you addicted to it. It's not your fault; it's Bungie's fault, if anyone's. You know, so please take some responsibility.
Have that like that escapism that you know, I'm interested, Niklas, like talking about this and that this lofty goal that you've sort of, you know, you and your team have set out to achieve is how did you actually practically, you and your team members, navigate this friction that we're talking about between the gameplay needing to be, as you say, like direct and straightforward and have this kind of, as you would put in like a design language, like an affordance or lean on conventions that make it understandable for the player. But then you have this very esoteric, you know, set of aesthetic goals that you're wanting to deliver to the player in a particular type of way, very delicately. How did you move through that with your team, like on a practical level?
To be honest, I think we could have done a lot better, and
there's always
I've definitely Yeah, and I think I definitely learned a lot about myself and like how to carry myself through artistic collaborations.
Mm.
But I feel like we didn't necessarily work on it. So what happened more was like whatever I had put in there so strongly to begin with
Mm.
was sort of like what carried that part of the production.
Right.
And
You put the seed in there and then that was like, yeah.
yeah, and then I was sort of like trying to just maintain that because
Mhm.
it became too taxing to be CEO of the company who like takes all the investments and whatever, and
Yeah.
being the spider in the web, and being the creative director, and being the art director, and having a team of artists which I had to train, or
Yeah.
had to, but taking care of them and making sure
Yeah,
everyone
of
was all
course.
right.
Yeah. Managing a team is, a huge amount of work.
Yeah, it is. And so there was like not enough energy for me left to like have that sort of friction
Mm.
and sort of like constantly try to eke that out.
Yeah.
So I've focused more on my responsibilities, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
and sort of like I can deal with that later, whatever, come what may. And thus, I'm very happy that I had Oscar, music guy, and Pelle, who could sort of like take care of that where I couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and also um, trust in Providence, I guess.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
You know,
Trust the process as well. Yeah.
yeah. And there were some heavy times releasing a demon, literally and
Yeah.
figuratively.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. That's like like you said before, it's like, making a game about birthing a demon, you got to go through doing it yourself as well, right?
yeah, like asking the players to have introspection. I mean, dude, you're not getting out. That's gonna
Yeah.
happen to you as well.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about that. It was fucking rough at times for sure. Yeah, so it was
Yeah.
rough on a
How
personal
long was it
level.
in total? Like, what are we talking, like 5, 6 years development or something like that? Or,
Yeah, 6 years, which is too long for a video game
yeah.
on a small scale. I think if I make more video games, they need to be like I need to find a way to like not let the worlds expand so much,
Yeah.
but more
Yeah.
try to keep the game can just be the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. And then like let there be other storytelling mediums or ways to immerse yourself in that experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful. Man, well, it's a really wondrous piece of entertainment, and I think like I could sit here as well. I'm not the interviewee today, but I could sit here off the back of Jump Light Odyssey and Solium Infernum, the games that we've just spent the last 3 years working on. And like there are mistakes that we made all along the way, like, and things that I learn about myself in the creative process with my collaborators. And I relate very strongly to what you were saying about after, like, and I was in a similar position too, like studio director and then like on the
Mm.
editorial and then running publishing and like all this stuff. Like, then when you've got to have that really intense creative conversation where there's a creative conflict with, and it can be your business partner or your friend that you've known for well over a decade, it still can be that thing where you're like, oh, I'll deal with that a little bit later on, or it can just be
Mm.
a bit too much. And you find yourself looking back after the project and looking at the game and going like, fuck, that's because I didn't have that tough conversation, or that's because I had that tough conversation in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it can really ride on you, those ththings. I think it's really hard to identify them in the moment as well, like when they come up too.
Yeah, you got to be like show yourself some love and be like
Yeah.
you did what you could with what you have.
Yeah.
And it's that's part of the process too, like
Mm.
finding out your priorities. I know now
Yeah,
that
it's a great
my
way of putting it.
priorities, like I know better what they are. I mean, I knew that before, but kind of lost it on the way.
Hmm.
And I think it has a lot to do with like how. No, I don't know. I'm still thinking about that. I'm not going to get into that.
That's the perfect answer. I love it. Hell yeah. Well, look, Nicholas, maybe that's a perfect place to leave it, with like you and me looking back on the games that we've just released and thinking about how to make them quicker and how to be kinder to ourselves, and
Yeah,
how to have
and
those tough conversations when we have no energy. And
for sure, and managing priorities, knowing what they are and standing up for them.
yeah, yeah. And, maybe then, who knows, when Ludwig grabs his next Grammy, he'll shout out video games because of us.
Exactly. But I'm so glad I play video games now.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Look, I played a game called Ultros and I checked out another one called Temple Odyssey, and I'm here to say video games rule, actually.
Yeah. And the music inspired me to write my new masterpiece.
Hell yeah, man. Well, hey, thanks for joining us today. It's been absolutely awesome chatting to you, dude.
Likewise, Trent, for sure.